Hello and welcome to the 20th episode of the PEM podcast, Psychic Eye Mystery Podcast. I'm your host, Victoria Laurie, with my fabulous sister, Sandy, coming at you every week. For 20 weeks.
It just
Actually,
won't
it's 21.
end. It won't end. It's not going to end.
No, because you keep coming up with these amazing mysteries, really. If it were just left to me, honestly, truly, folks, it would have been 3 episodes, because I'm a busy girl and
Maybe 4.
Maybe 4. But yeah, this is actually our 21st week because we did the predictions too in there. We mixed those in there, and we didn't actually count that as like a numbered episode. But for those of you who are keeping count, so 80 more to go, Sans. We'll hit 100. Somebody help me.
Yeah, really. That's what's running in my brain right now.
Where
you could
is
read my
your
mind.
Mother? Oh, goodness. All right. So we have a packed show today. So let's get to it. First, I think let's do, book promotion. Boop-ba-da-doo. I wonder if people like my boop-ba-da-doos. I was like,
no one's commenting, so I just
yeah, I know. If they don't, they'll let me know, right?
That's true.
I don't like your boop-ba-da-doos. Anyway, so the book today that we are featuring is
Signed anonymous.
I know, yes. Haters gonna hate. It's gonna hate. But what's so funny is the fans make certain. I find this really adorable because I love and adore you. I really love and adore you. So I think it's just adorable when fans are like, yeah, loving the podcast, blah, blah, blah. Sandy's amazing. I love Sandy. Sandy's the best. I'm like, nothing has changed from childhood, favored daughter. It's okay. Redheaded stepchild over here is just fine with your rejection.
I'm actually a very boring person. That's why they like me.
Again.
I'm not stealing your thing.
Oh, whatever. Whatevs. Anyway, What a Ghoul Wants, which is something in the MJ holiday series. You would think that I would come better prepared and know which number this is in the series, but I never know. It's somewhere in
You haven't been prepared yet, just so we're clear. You always do this every week. It's like, I don't know.
No, people will freak out if I come prepared, right? I love this book. I know you guys are really tired of us saying, this is my favorite. It's my favorite. That's my favorite. But this one's got a really creepy vibe to it. And there are a couple of scenes in here that hopefully will raise a few goosebumps if you like scary, dark kind of books with some humor, with a lot of humor in here. So what's it about? What a Ghoul Wants? And I'm looking at it and I'm like, I should have gone What a Ghoul Haunts instead of What a Ghoul Wants. So, hindsight.
Oh, too late.
Okay, so Kidwella Castle is in northern Wales, is rumored to be haunted by a deadly ghost, the Grim Widow, who allegedly drowns unsuspecting guests in the castle's moat. Not long after MJ and her crew arrive at the castle to film their ghost hunting cable TV show, Ghoul Getters, 2 new victims are added to the Widow's grisly roster. Fear ripples through the castle, especially when it's discovered that the victims may have had help into their watery graves from someone in the land of the living. The local inspector suspects father-son serial killers, but MJ thinks that theory is all wet. To catch the true culprit, she will need to dive deep into the castle's past and bring some long-buried secrets to the surface. That sinking feeling. Yeah, there are a couple of scenes in there that were very visual in my mind as I was writing them. When I write, it really is kind of like a movie sort of unfolding. And there were a couple of scenes when I was writing them. It was like my fingers couldn't type fast enough because they were creepy. I wanted to get through them. I like a little creep. I like a little when I'm writing it, not when I'm reading it. When I'm reading it, I'm not so into it. But you, my fabulous sister, don't like a lot of creep, and yet you read all of my books. So I give you so
No,
much.
I pretended to read all of your books. Just to be clear. No, I've read
Chucked
all your
across the
books.
room when I visit. Why is
Right.
there a big dent in this
Fast
book? I don't
turning.
know.
Yeah.
The dog, yeah, blame Pugsley or blame,
No, I'm
blame
the kind of
Stella.
person that will turn on all the lights and have it be daylight if I have to watch a scary movie.
Oh,
And
I
a
won't.
scary movie, by my definition, is the movie Scary Movie. Okay. Which is kind
Yeah.
of farcical.
I've never seen it because it's scary. I mean, I don't know. I think when you and I were growing up, there was enough kind of fear in our house. We didn't really need to add anymore.
Yeah.
And there was something called Burnt Offerings. I don't know if you ever saw this movie, but it was like, it came on when I was, I don't know, maybe 12 or 13. And I have never gotten over that movie. That movie scared the fuck out of me. And it's still, even in thinking about it, there was one character that was like a chauffeur that, I don't know, he was the creepiest looking character I've ever seen. And he played this really, really creepy role in the movie. I don't know if any of you have seen it out there, but if you have, give us a thumbs up about Burnt Offerings and how it has like scarred you for life.
And while you're at it, in the thumbs up mode, click
Hit
like
the
if you
like
like our
button. Hit the
podcast
like button, ring
and
the bell,
subscribe.
and subscribe. Yes, do that throughout the podcast. Like, bell, subscribe. Like the bell, subscribe.
That was
So-
not planned, by the way. We did not collaborate on that.
We never collaborate because you invariably show up 5 minutes late. Me, I'm totally unprepared. At least you're prepared. I'm totally unprepared. So then we have like 3 minutes where we're supposed to kind of coordinate what's going to take place over the course of the podcast. And invariably it's our time to catch up because we're both so busy right now. So you get to suffer. Anyway, anecdote. Sandy's playing the world's tiniest violin right now. Anecdote. I don't know that I have like a particular anecdote specifically that I want to pull out, mostly because a lot of the readings I did this week were very personal. But someone did send me an email this week that I thought was a really, really fantastic question. They had asked if it's possible for me to spend the entire reading talking to just one individual that they wanted to connect with. And like immediately I was like, no. But here's why. So what happens when I connect with the other side is that I'm not necessarily having a conversation one-to-one with a single person. It's not like I go to like the veil and then they step forward and we're like conversing in our own little bubble. Really what it's like is that I'm connected to an intercom that's in a room where there are a bunch of souls. And I can only get a feeling for how many souls are in that room connected to my particular client. Sometimes the room feels crowded. Sometimes it's like one person in crickets. So it really depends. It's like a long distance call gets placed and whoever wants to come to the phone or the intercom can come to the intercom. Having said that, there's really very little verbal back and forth. Most of the communication is me speaking English, in my mind, like asking questions or trying to pull more information or trying to decipher what it is they're showing me. From their perspective, they're kind of imprinting on my brain emotions, thoughts, images, references, sometimes even to my past, pop culture, things like that. They're trying to communicate a message to me without using words. Basically, it's kind of a telepathic imprinting kind of that's going on. Occasionally, I will get a word. I was asking a woman, I said, I think I'd hit on her grand aunt. And I said, did she have like a E, like did her name end in E, like Betty? And she said Peggy. Her name was Peggy. Jeez, look. Sorry about that. Yeah, her name was Peggy. So sometimes you can hear the vowel. A lot of the consonants are really hard to hear. It isn't conversation per se. So, and the other thing about, interacting with just one individual at a time, I can reach out and ask for anybody that you want me to interact with from the other side. It's up to them whether or not they want to step forward. And it depends on how much energy that they have, that is like, as long as they'll communicate with me. Like I was reading for a woman this week, different person. And she'd asked, can I connect to her father? Her father came forward, and he, I probably connected with him for a full 5-6 minutes. And then I, said, okay, and your next question. She's like, that's it from my dad. And I'm like, thank you for expressing your disappointment. I really appreciate that. I'm working my ass off, bitch. Seriously, it's like, don't do that, people. Like, this takes energy. Like, don't express your disappointment. Okay, save that for later. But anyway, it's impossible for me to really kind of hold that connection for 30 minutes, because they can't hold it for 30 minutes. And we both, like, the longer we both try, or I try, the more exhausting it becomes. It really is a difficult thing to kind of focus in or find that one specific energy and hold it for longer than about 5, 6, 7 minutes. So if you're interested in only connecting to one person, good luck, because that one person has only a finite amount of energy on the other side to expend when they come to the intercom. So and sometimes people have specific questions, why did you do this? Why did you do that, kind of thing, right? And the spirit may or may not answer. And typically, if there was an issue involved between my client and the soul I'm trying to connect with, it can sometimes turn into what feels like a therapy session. And I just want to tell everybody, don't use a medium as therapy. Use a licensed therapist as therapy. Bringing you a connection with a loved one can absolutely be healing. It can be therapeutic, but it is not a replacement for therapy. And I think there are some people out there that would rather do the easy work than the hard work. And the hard work involves therapy, where it's a look not only at what happened, what that person might have done to you, but also your role in it. And it's important. That's important work. So them's just my bits of advice. Don't use us as therapists. We're not licensed to help you in that perspective. We can translate, we can communicate your questions to the other side. Hopefully they'll give you a satisfactory answer. If there was pain or abuse involved, I guarantee you it usually won't provide a satisfactory answer. So that's what therapy is for. So use that. So anyway, that was my 2 cents. All right, let's get to the podcast. This is a good one. Sandy, you did such a brilliant job on this one. Truly, I know I say that all the time, but like, these keep getting better. We have a slideshow again because everybody loved the slideshow from last time. So let's see.
Before you start,
Again,
let me do the introduction.
Before you start.
Right. Well, this is.
Before you start.
Are you done?
Before you start. Now I'm done.
Okay.
I had to get the last one out there. Go.
Anyway.
You can't have dead air. Stop.
So today's podcast is the second in a series of 3 or 4 cruise-related mysteries. And so to many, as we know, an ocean cruise sounds like a dream vacation where you get to sit on a deck and visit exotic locations. And at night, there's live entertainment. There's, endless amounts of food, cocktails, and gambling. And while this sounds like the perfect vacation, it might also be the perfect place to commit a crime and actually get away with it. And the reason that is because according to cruisejunkie.com, run by a Canadian sociologist, Ross Klein, among the 300 plus people who went overboard while on cruises between 1995 and 2019, a third of them are reported missing, while the others were all deemed to be suicides or jumps overboard. And despite fears among family members that their beloved was kidnapped or murdered, arrests and convictions rarely follow these types of events. And the reason that is in part because the cruise lines are doing everything that they can to dampen concerns about foul play, Bad publicity will result in cancellations and lost bookings. And there's no law enforcement on board, simply security staff that's employed by the cruise lines. So when an incident occurs, the security staff reports it to the captain, and it is up to the captain to then determine if the matter should be referred to authorities. And typically, his first line of authorities that he's going to refer the matter to is the country in which the cruise line has registered their flag in. Oftentimes, it's the Bahamas. When it comes to international waters, right, help can be actually thousands of miles away, because maritime law dictates that once a ship is in international waters, 12 nautical miles or 14 miles off the coast of whatever is the jurisdiction that that investigation falls to. And that's actually what happened in today's case. So given this lacks oversight, when a US citizen is involved, as I mentioned in last week's podcast, in 2012, a law was passed here in the United States that gives the FBI jurisdiction over cases involving US citizens, but the power by the FBI to employ to resolve a matter is often dictated by their access to the actual cruise ship itself, the crime scene, the people involved, and the guests. And often, if you're referring the case to, let's say, an international authority, they aren't going to hold the crime scene for the FBI to come, and cruise cabins can be cleaned, areas where there's been an incident can be cleaned, and it kind of takes away all the forensic evidence that the FBI would be able to investigate around. So, as I said, today's case is a prime example of this calamity. So, in the early morning hours of July 5th, 2005, George Allen Smith, I'm sorry, let me have you start your slideshow.
Working on it, baby, working on it. Okay.
So July 5th, 2005, George Allen Smith IV, banished from under suspicious circumstances from the Royal Caribbean International cruise ship, the MS Brilliance of the Seas. His family firmly believes that his demise was the result of foul play. However, 10 years following his disappearance, the FBI officially closed their investigation due to a lack of evidence supporting anything other than George's disappearance was the result of a tragic accident. Born on October 3rd, 1978, to parents George and Maureen Smith, George and his sister Bree grew up in a tight-knit family in southern Connecticut, just outside of Greenwich. After a 3-year courtship on June 25th, 2005, 26-year-old George married 25-year-old Jennifer Hagel in a cliffside wedding at the Inn at the Castle Hill in Newport, Rhode Island. And upon return from their 2-week honeymoon cruise, George had plans to take over his father's liquor store in Cos Cob, and Jennifer would begin her job as a 3rd-grade teacher. The couple had much to celebrate, as in addition to their nuptials, Jennifer had just earned her master's degree in education from Roger Williams University. Following their storybook wedding, the newlyweds flew to Barcelona, Spain, and on June 29th, boarded the Royal Caribbean's Brilliance of the Seas and set sail on a 12-day Mediterranean cruise with stops in Greece and Turkey. On July 4th, 2005, Jennifer and George spent the day touring one of George's favorite places, Mykonos, Greece. And then they returned to the ship in time for dinner. At around midnight on the 5th, as the ship cruised toward Turkey, the couple headed to the casino on the 3rd floor with fellow honeymooners Paul and Galina Kavinsky. It was there that casino security cameras captured the last known recorded image of George. In addition to Paul and Galina, Josh Askin, a friend of George's that the couple had met while touring Florence, Italy, joined George and Jennifer at the casino. The group quickly expanded to include cousins Zachary and Greg Rosenberg and their friend Rusty Kaufman. Josh became concerned by the behavior of an employee, Lloyd Bota, who worked as a croupier because he was getting a little too cozy with Jennifer. And when Josh realized that George wasn't paying any attention to the unfolding situation, he opted not to intervene. With the casino closing at 2:30 in the morning, Bota, Jennifer, George, and Josh, Zach, Greg, and Rusty went to the discotheque, grabbed a table, and began drinking from a smuggled bottle of absinthe. Multiple eyewitnesses claim that at some point the newlyweds got into a drunken argument, which resulted in Jennifer storming out of the club after giving George a swift kick in the privates. Josh claimed that Bota followed Jennifer out of the club. By the time the 5 men left the club, George was too drunk to walk without some help, so his new friends accompanied him back to his stateroom. Jennifer, however, was not there, so George decided to search the ship before giving up and returning to their room. Shortly thereafter, at 4:05 in the morning, George's cabin door neighbor, Cleet Hyman, called guest relations to report that a group of men were making loud noises as if they were involved in a drinking game. This was the second complaint Hyman had made about his neighbors during the cruise, having called earlier during the trip when Jennifer and George had been rowdy. Josh Askin later stated that he and Rusty Kaufman and the Rosenbergs, Zach and Greg, were with George at this time, but the four left the room together. However, Cleet Hyman claims he only saw 3 men leaving the Smith's room through the peephole of his stateroom door. Quote, "You could definitely hear a voice ushering people out of the room," he said. Quote, "Good night, good night, good night," repeatedly. "I heard the door close and then I waited a little bit, 10 seconds or so, and I looked out my door, and that's when I saw the male subjects, 3 male subjects." Cleet has never revealed the identity of the 3 men he saw, or if he was even able to see exactly who was in the hallway. Cleet then claims he heard a horrific thud shortly after seeing the 3 men in the hall. "My first thought was that someone fell off the balcony," he said. Security was dispatched to the Smith's cabin in response to Cleet Hyman's complaint, but upon arrival, they did not find any evidence of danger or violence in the hallway, nor did they hear any noise coming from the Smith's room, even after knocking on the cabin door. With no justification for invading a guest cabin based on one simple partying noise complaint, security left the scene, presuming all was well. Shortly after 4:30 in the morning, Jennifer Smith was found sleeping on the floor of a corridor a significant distance from her cabin on the other side of the ship. Security was notified and arrived quickly thereafter. As several ship personnel remained with Mrs. Smith, 2 crew members went to her cabin at 4:48 a.m. to see if anyone was there to assist in her return. They knocked, and after not getting a response, looked inside the cabin, found it empty, and saw nothing amiss. Jennifer was taken back to her cabin by wheelchair at 4:57 a.m. by 2 security guards and a female supervisor. She was placed on top of her bed and asked if she was all right. She answered that she was okay, and the security personnel left the room. Even though George wasn't in the room, Jennifer was not alarmed, as George had spent the night outside of their cabin on a previous evening during their trip after a night of heavy partying. At 6:15 a.m., the cruise ship arrived in Turkey, and at 6:40 a.m., passengers were cleared to go ashore. 2 hours after the ship had docked, a large bloodstain was discovered on a metal canopy in an area below the Smith's balcony, smeared in the shape of a man's body. Within 10 minutes, the canopy area was secured and a thorough search of the ship was undertaken to locate the passengers staying in the cabins above the surrounding blood-soaked canopy. Despite numerous loudspeaker pages, 3 guests were unaccounted for, including the Smiths. The ship's officer entered the Smith's cabin at 8:41 a.m., and after verifying that the room was empty, the captain ordered it sealed. As ship's personnel continued to search the ship for the Smiths, a guard was posted outside of their cabin door at 8:50 a.m. The intensive search of the ship included a review of their CPAS system, which tracks people who enter and or leave the ship. There was no indication that the Smiths had walked off the ship with other passengers who had gone ashore. Shortly before 10 a.m., after discovering that Jennifer was scheduled for a massage in the ship's spa, the staff captain and 2 other ship officials met with her in a private area just outside of the treatment room to determine if she knew where George might be located. Jennifer told the officials she was unaware that her husband was missing or where he might be, as she thought he likely had slept somewhere else on the ship due to their late night partying. It was at that point that her guest relations manager informed Jennifer that something out of her cabin indicated that her husband may have gone overboard. With George still unaccounted for, the ship's captain notified Turkish authorities and the FBI. From there, officers calculated that George had possibly gone overboard in Greek waters and contacted the Greek Coast Guard at 1:57 p.m. to conduct a search. Turkish police boarded the ship at 12:30 p.m. and conducted a full forensic investigation of both the canopy and the Smith's cabin, including taking blood samples, fingerprints, photographs, and secured interviews with the last known men to see George Smith alive, Josh Askin and the 3 Russian-American men, Rusty Kaufman, Greg Rosenberg, and Zach Rosenberg. And then in their statements, the men claimed that they had partied with George into the early morning hours, and shortly after 4 a.m., they had brought George back to his cabin. While Josh used the bathroom, the other men took George's shoes off and helped put him to bed. After leaving George, the men went back to one of their cabins, and ordered lots of food from room service. By late afternoon, police completed their forensic investigation, claiming that they had obtained all the forensic evidence that they needed and had turned over their findings to the FBI. They also concluded that they did not have any reason to hold any of the people that they had questioned regarding their interactions with George prior to his disappearance. At this point, the ship was cleared to leave port. Jennifer elected to disembark in Turkey, and after retrieving her belongings from guest relations, she boarded a flight home to her family. Once the ship docked in Barcelona on July 11th, the FBI took over the investigation into the disappearance of George Smith. Early on, the ship's captain described it likely as an accident. However, George's parents and sister continue to this day to suspect foul play. Circumstantial evidence points to a robbery gone bad, including in the Smith's cabin, there were 2 small traces of blood discovered on the bed sheets. And on the Smith's cabin balcony, there was a lounge chair oddly positioned with its back against the railing. The Smith's family attorney, Michael Jones, could not verify the claim by Josh Askin, Rusty Kaufman, and Greg Rosenberg and Zach Rosenberg that they had ordered room service after leaving George's room. While ship's logs show that a call was made, room service does not have a record of an order being delivered to the men last seen with George, indicating that their alibis may not hold up. Furthermore, 3 days after sailing from the port of Turkey, Rusty Kaufman and cousins Greg and Zach Rosenberg were kicked off the Brilliance of the Seas after a 20-year-old woman came forward with a claim that she had been raped by the 3 men. Josh Askin was also present for part of the alleged assault, which had been filmed with Rusty Kaufman's camera. The rape charge was later dropped by an Italian magistrate after a review of the videotape, which was long after the 3 men had returned home. Attorney Mike Jones was able to take the depositions of these 4 young men. Through his depositions, Attorney Jones learned about the group's use of Kaufman's video camera on the cruise, and in particular, the possibility of a damaging video made by one of these men just hours after George disappeared. On the tape, Jones says the 3 Russian Americans are seen and heard making callous remarks about George's death. And at the end, Greg Rosenberg said, quote, "I told you I was gangster." By 2010, Greg Rosenberg was serving a 3-year sentence for trafficking oxycodone in a Florida prison. Despite his quote on video, George claims he did not have it in his heart to kill anyone. The FBI is in possession of the provocative videotape, and lawyers for the young men say that their clients did nothing wrong. Adding to the family's suspicion, in 2012, the New York Post reported that the matter of George's disappearance had been referred to the Mafia Division of the FBI. In 2007, in exchange for publicity declaring that her husband fell overboard because of a tragic accident, Jennifer accepted a $1.1 million payment from Royal Caribbean. In October 2009, Jennifer married financial advisor Jeff Agnew and subsequently gave birth to 2 daughters, her first in 2010 and her second in 2013. Jennifer did not return to teaching, but instead has worked with nonprofits, including the Michael J. Fox Foundation for Parkinson's Research and Near and Far Aid, a nonprofit organization that works to provide affordable housing and eliminate poverty. Jennifer's relationship with her former in-laws is strained, in part due to her Royal Caribbean settlement. The family has repeatedly criticized her for not only accepting far too little money, but for also publicly saying that George had accidentally fallen overboard and that her hasty settlement was done in part due to hide the embarrassing details about her behavior on the cruise. The Smiths reached their own settlement with Royal Caribbean in 2011, which also required the cruise line to turn over documents and interviews pertaining to their son's case. The Smith family is offering a $100,000 reward for information leading directly to an arrest or conviction of the person or persons responsible for their son's disappearance. In 2013, George's parents backed a bill co-sponsored by U.S. Senators Richard Blumenthal and Jay Rockefeller, which is the Cruise Ship Passenger Protection Act, and it allows for greater transparency of crimes that are committed on cruise ships and provides for more federal government protection of passenger rights. In January 2015, the FBI in Connecticut officially closed its investigation into the disappearance of George Smith IV due to lack of evidence suggesting that George had been murdered, and instead his death may have been the result of an accident. With the closing of their case, all forensic evidence collected from the cruise ship was returned to Jennifer. On December 23, 2019, Gregory Rosenberg was murdered in Majestic Groves, Davie, Florida, by an unknown assailant. He was 33 years old at the time of his death. Unfortunately, the circumstances that led to George's disappearance off the Brilliance of the Seas in the early morning hours of July 5, 2005 remain a mystery. My sources for this story include Wikipedia, Royal Caribbean press release, Royal Caribbean International response to allegations involving George Smith's disappearance with factual chronology, January 5th, 2006, CBS News, FBI closes probe of vanished cruise ship honeymooner by Stephanie Slipher, January 7th, 2015, CBS News timeline, the disappearance of George Smith, July 5th, 2015, And Daily Mail UK, the life, marriage, and 2 children of the honeymoon widow 10 years after her husband mysteriously died on a cruise, days after their wedding, by Chris Spargo, August 24th, 2015. So Victoria, was it murder? Was it an accident?
Was it murder?
Was it murder?
Was it murder?
I
What a juicy case, right? I think anybody having listened to the extensive research and write-up that you did would be like, yeah, one of those guys had to have been responsible for George's murder. It's not there. Malice is not there. The element of violence is completely missing from the energy surrounding George's death. So I did an automatic writing, expecting, after I read your write-up, Sans, expecting like some information on at least one of the suspects, because when I was reading the write-up, I was like, no one's jumping out at me. This is not good. Who's, maybe I'm broken. This is broken. Mine's broken. So I reached out to the other side, and they were really very clear. They were like, yeah, no, it was an accident. So here's what I believed happened. I believe George very likely was an alcoholic. And having been raised by an alcoholic, having been, having nearly married an alcoholic, you and I both are very familiar with alcoholics and their behavior, right? How they can be fairly high functioning until they're not high functioning, right? So I think that George was a fairly high functioning alcoholic. I'm looking at the behavior of how trashed he got that night at the disco, and how his friends had to literally help him to the room, right? That indicates someone who, it's more than just like a college, like, you're in college, you've got the peer pressure, oh, more shots, more shots, more shots, right? This is someone who just doesn't stop drinking until they've gone way, way too far. And as evidence of that, Jennifer had noted that George spent an additional night outside of their cabin, right? He'd gotten drunk and he'd slept somewhere else. So the fact that she's not alarmed or upset about this behavior at all tells me that this is his usual modus operandi. Like, this is usual for him. This is not unusual for him. This is something that he typically does. He gets so trashed, he passes out wherever he is. So I do believe George was probably in a kind of a blackout stage when they quote unquote put him to bed. I believe that he at some point after they left got up because he was starting to feel seasick, and made his way out onto the balcony, where I believe he passed out, fell over the railing, and landed headfirst. I believe that he probably was on that, what is it, the awning? Was it an awning, basically?
It was a canopy.
Canopy. I believe he was on that steel canopy for a period of time, but the vibrations of the boat kind of just slid him off. It probably was at an angle and he probably slid off. Do I think he was dead at the time that he slid off and into the sea? I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. I believe he hit head first, because that was the indication from the other side that he hit head first. And that he wasn't really even aware that he was passing out or falling. There just isn't any foul play. There isn't any stamp of malice. There's no stamp of violence. And then I look at, we've got like little kind of out of context things, right? These 3 Russian Americans are kind of seedy kind of guys, right? Jennifer is off. Maybe she's off with one of these other workers from the bar.
Croupier.
Yeah.
The croupier.
Croupier, right? And she passes out. There was a lot to suggest from the other side that these 2 weren't the happy couple that everybody has made them out to be, that they kind of went into their marriage knowing it was pretty much a mistake, but there was a lot of pressure there. And I look at the fight that they had, and the fact that she went there Like this wasn't a yell match. This was a well-practiced routine between the two of them. And, she kicks him in the gonads and walks off, right? I have a feeling this was like their usual modus operandi. This was like the thing that they did. So she, passes out on the other side of the ship as well. She very likely also had a drinking problem. I think it's more than just being in your 20s and drinking too much. I think that these two actually had drinking issues. As far as the three guys are concerned, here's the deal.
It's actually four guys. It's four guys.
Yeah, four guys.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you're going to take someone back, right, and rob them, you're not going to put them into bed and take off their shoes, right? And make sure that they're safe and sound. And then good night, good night, good night, right? And go out the door and then head to your hotel or your cabin and order room service. Like, that just isn't what's going to happen. That isn't going to happen. That is the behavior of people who believe everything is normal. They're not acting abnormal. They're acting normal. So I 100% believe they left George fine, in bed, shoes off, ready to sleep it off. As far as the guy next to, what was his name? In the cabin next to him?
Cleet Hyman.
Hyman. Okay. So
Cleet was his first name. Yeah.
Mr. Hyman, Cleet. Cleet. What a weird name. Anyway, I took a look out of my peephole of my front door. Even if you have like a fisheye kind of angle, you really can't see to the side. How does this guy know only three men walked past his door? He has no idea, right? He waited 10 seconds, good night, good night, good night, right? Door closes, he looks out, he sees three guys walk by. Maybe the fourth one led the parade, maybe the fourth one was the first guy out. So there's no way he could have seen to the side to see three men come out of the room. He simply saw three people go by. He could have missed the fourth. So this whole notion that, one stayed behind. Okay, so he hears the thud, right? There's no argument. There's no scuffling. There's no, obvious aggression or anything else going on. This guy's got obviously bad hearing, right? Bad type hearing. So he's listening to everything because he's just waiting for it to kind of all go away. A short time after these guys leave, thud. That's George going to the balcony, trying to get some air. Maybe he was ready to throw up, and be sick. The position of the chair against the railing. Okay, well, maybe the sun was shining when someone was trying to read a book earlier and they just positioned it differently. Like, it's not odd to me. None of it is odd to me. It's just sort of taken out of these little bits, let's string together evidence of murder. And I honestly don't think it was that. I think it was just a very tragic accident. That poor George was far too drunk, was close to blacking out, was ready to get sick, went over to the balcony to try and get some air. He was a tall guy, not a short guy, tall guy. So it's foreseeable that he could have leaned over the balcony, lost his footing, boom, over he goes.
Or he could have backed that chair up to the balcony, climbed up to sit on the balcony.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I think happened. Was he did that and he flipped backwards.
Yeah, 100%. Could have been that, right? Could have been that. I don't find that the chair positioned away from the view of the ocean odd at all. Not at all. As far as Jennifer is concerned, this poor woman, right? His family is understandably upset. They've lost their son. They don't know what happened to him. They kind of left him in her care, right? And then they find out all of this stuff about the fights that they had, how she went off, presumably followed by the copier, and how she was sleeping in another part of the ship. And then she went and, was about ready to have a massage. To them, it must have felt like she did not care. I think that nothing could be further from the truth. I think that she's a lovely woman, a generous, kind, caring woman who had a terrible, terrible experience happen to her. And I think that she was blamed publicly and privately by George's parents. When I was tuning in on the other side and they were giving me the information, they had said that George was looking at his life kind of from the standpoint of, I shouldn't have gone down that road of too much alcohol, too much partying, not taking life seriously. And they indicated that he was getting ready to come back through at some point in the future. I don't know if it's near future, it's his timing, right? And that it was going to become important to him to have a life of meaning. And so that's what he's been busy working on in the time since. He's been working on building a blueprint for a meaningful life in the future. And they also said that the reason that Jennifer didn't return to teaching and went into nonprofit instead was that's George's influence. Then he was trying to influence her to have a life of meaning, the one that he was quote unquote denied, or didn't get because of this tragic accident. So I don't think she's to blame in any way, manner, shape, or form. She was 25 years old. She was, I think, in a marriage that was brought on by a lot of pressure rather than maybe a wise choice for the both of them. And Zana Honeymoon has too much to drink. She's got a husband who's got unpredictable behavior, is known for sleeping outside of the cabin. He disappears. She's in Turkey, interrogated by the Turkish authorities, which, you said to me the other day, that's not fun. That is not a fun experience.
I haven't been interrogated by Turkish authorities, just to be clear, but I have been to the beautiful country, and the authorities take things like really seriously, like military seriously.
Yeah.
So just saying.
So she's, 25, she's in Turkey, she's being interrogated, she's terrified. I 100% understand her just wanting to get home, probably to her safety net, her support group. His parents didn't fly out, they didn't fly out. They were still back in Connecticut. So she's all alone, supposed to handle this. She's barely an adult, So, so my heart really goes out to her, and I'm so glad that she's found happiness. I'm so glad that she's had children. I'm so glad that she has been able to move on. It's heartbreaking that George never got to fulfill, his life's quote unquote purpose. He is home. He's on the other side. And my heart goes also out to the family. I'm not trying to blame them, but I can see how they could look at the facts and only see murder, only see something untoward, right?
Well, grief and trauma can often be like a blinding,
for sure,
sole focus kind of result.
For sure. To relieve George of any blame for his own death. I can understand that. But when you really kind of take a step back and look at it, and the whole thing about they ordered room service and there's a record of the call, but no room service. Okay, well, guys, it's 4:30 in the morning. Okay. Number one, room service staff, very, very light. Number two, that's an opportunity if you're working that shift to kind of pocket a little extra money, right? You can take up a bunch of food and not plug it in, not punch it in, and not necessarily even record it. Who's going to know? Who's going to know? There's probably not even a supervisor at that time. It's just extra food headed up. And, okay, your bill is $25, whatever. Thanks for the tip. Done. So it doesn't surprise me at all that there wasn't a quote unquote record of the food that was ordered. It's just not a story that you make up if you can't back it up with facts. So there's no reason for them to have said we ordered a bunch of room service if they didn't actually receive a bunch of room service. So I don't find any evidence of murder in the ether at all. None. And I looked, guys, I looked hard because there's a specific energy with violence. There's a specific energy when a crime is committed. It's heavy. It's filled with violence and anger and emotion and aggression and fear. it's like the most intense emotions all mixed up into one ball that's stamped on the ether, that's stamped on that atmosphere. And it's really hard to miss. So I just didn't feel it. I just couldn't find it. So that's my
Any
opinion.
thoughts on what happened to Gregory Rosenberg, who's murdered?
Yeah, I think that he was mixed up with, I think he was made an example of, honestly. I think he was mixed up in a ring where he was probably skimming off the top, and he was made an example of. That's my feeling. I don't think at the time that George went missing that he was necessarily part of this drug ring. I think that his life just kind of went in that direction in subsequent years. So that's my thinking. I just don't see the two that are related. I don't think this was a drug deal gone bad. I don't think George's disappearance was a drug deal gone bad. I don't think it was a robbery gone bad. The 2 droplets of blood on the sheets, shit, I've woken up and, rubbed a scab and, seen blood on my sheets. These are drops. They're drops, If this was a violent murder, trust me, there'd be a lot more. And Cleet would have heard it. So it's not there. I agree with the FBI. This was a tragic accident. Just not there.
Okay.
Ta-da.
Well, next, thank you for your impressions. It's sad. It is a storybook in photos. It's a storybook
right
story,
right.
Beautiful couple, lots of promise, young, on their way. And
yeah,
didn't work
They
out.
really were. They were beautiful people, really, really pretty. And she still is, but he's breathtaking, good looking dude.
For sure. So next week's case is continuing our cruise tragedy theme. If you have booked a cruise and are looking to now cancel it, let us continue.
Most of my
to fuel
clients
those
actually
fears.
are waiting to go on a cruise. I have so many clients that are waiting to go on a cruise. Not you. You'll be
Anyway.
fine. You'll be fine. And if you're worried, book an appointment with me at victorialaurie.com and I'll look and see if your cruise will be okay.
Okay, so next week's story is about Rebecca Coriam, who was a British citizen, and she was working on a Disney cruise line. And the last time she was seen and her whereabouts were known were captured on closed circuit TV on the Disney cruise. And nobody knows what has happened to Rebecca. So we'll dig into that story next week and look forward to your impressions.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I hope it's not another Amy Lynn Brandley story. I haven't looked at it yet, but fingers crossed that she didn't suffer a similar fate. Well, like what would be a better fate than that? Death. I don't know. Yeah, I'll look and see. We'll see what it is.
Okay.
All right. But thank you, Sandy. This was fantastic. Again, if you'd like to sign up for a session with me, so I can look and see what your vacation is going to look like, please go to victorialaurie.com. And if you'd like to check out anything else about me, you can go there and find stuff out. And if you want to check out any of my books, that's a good resource as well. Or just go to your local independent bookstore and purchase one. Just give it a shot. So.
And also, don't forget, if you enjoyed our podcast, please click like, subscribe, and we're always interested in any comments that you may have.
Yeah. So if you have any questions about any of this, please let us know. You guys are wonderful and have been leaving a lot of comments. And I know I've been meaning to answer you back. It's been busy. But I'll try and make some time for that this weekend. Anyway, love you, Sandy. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. This was awesome. You did such a great job.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And guys, we'll see you next week. Okay. All right. Bye.